So first thing I want to show you guys is Ghostgate. He gave us this description, and it's going to be hard for me to read. So I'm not dyslexic. I just can't see it. Okay, so be kind to me. He said this: I still believe my definition of sin, or anything that runs contrary to the natural blueprint of creation, is the most accurate. It doesn't necessarily mean evil. It just means the more of it you do, the worse things will become. Give me 2 seconds. The music in my ears is very distracting. Okay. It's like a law of nature. In this model, ordering an IKEA bookshelf and choosing to put it together with duct tape instead of the provided screws would be a sin. Think about that, because it's a good point. I think God's design blueprint is key in identifying what sin actually is. Isolated incidents of duct tape bookshelves don't affect me because I use screws. But when a duct tape bookshelf movement crops up, I start to take notice. I sin all the time, but I don't feel proud of it. I don't broadcast it. I pray about it and incrementally work on it. So in summary, sin is anything contrary to God's blueprint and acts as a virus. And the more the virus spreads beyond a certain threshold to the various facets of life, the more the society crumbles. There is a direct correlation, and history bears this out. That's my 2 cents. So that's Ghostgate's definition, his understanding of what sin is. And I don't disagree with it. I agree with it quite a bit, because if you think about it, that definition actually encompasses the more standard, more cookie cutter definition. That cookie cutter definition, if we pull from, any of the major sources that Christian, your average Christian goes to Google, they're going to type in what is sin? What is the definition of sin? They're going to find something like this. Sin is described in the Bible as transgression of the law of God. There's a reference to 1 John 3:4, which says this: everyone who makes a practice of sinning also practices lawlessness. Sin is lawlessness and rebellion against God. Then they quote Deuteronomy and Joshua as well. We don't really need to read those. Sin had its beginning with Lucifer, probably the most beautiful and powerful of the angels. I don't like that they add that. It's unnecessary. It adds details that are debatable to a degree, but beyond the point. Not content with his position, he desired to be higher than God, speaking of Lucifer, and that was a downfall. That was his downfall. The beginning of sin, they're referencing Isaiah 14 here, renamed Satan. He brought sin to the human race in the Garden of Eden, where he tempted Adam and Eve with the same enticement, quote, you shall be like God. Genesis 3 describes Adam and Eve's rebellion against God and against his command. Since that time, sin has been passed down through all generations of mankind, and we, Adam's descendants, have inherited sin from him. Romans 5:12 tells us that through Adam, sin entered the world, and so death was passed on to all men because the wages of sin is death. So there's a lot more, but I don't really care to read it. That's a good short kind of cookie cutter answer. They've got some Bible verses thrown in, and they're relatively used within context, so it's a decently expressed idea of what sin is. But it's good to compare the cookie cutter answer to, in my opinion, a more well thought out, well expressed, and more all encompassing answer, which is what Ghostgate gave us in the Discord. It's a much better answer, in my opinion, again, because by using Ghostgate's answer for what sin is, you're taking all of the other definitions and you're sucking them into the same idea. So it's a more broad scope without trying to really isolate all of these very specific things of what sin is. Well, what does sin look like? What about his definition? His understanding of it is anything that is contrary to the natural blueprint of creation. What is creation? It is the product of God. It is the product of morality and goodness. So anything that it runs contrary to that would be considered sin.